afternoon, 4 o'clock on your Monday afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tom Green.
And I'm Kim Christensen. Well, there are things to talk about besides the eclipse. It's been quite a weekend around here. Right now, thousands of people across Colorado are still without power. Here's a live look at Xcel's outage map. Just a few minutes ago, the outages dropped below 900. Still, about 27,000 people impacted. Xcel said this morning more than 500 crew members are in the field working to inspect lines, repair damage, and restore service. Just within the last few minutes, Xcel said outages may last into tomorrow along Kipling and in Arvada and Boulder. The power outages that remain are a mixture of people who lost power because Xcel purposefully turned it off and customers whose power lines were damaged by the storm itself.
Well, 9 News reporter Marshall Zellinger had a chance to speak with Xcel Colorado's CEO today about the response, as well as the communication that came ahead of those power outages. Marshall?
Which was limited. Xcel's CEO was contrite about communication, admitting that could have been better than just the day before and the day of having power turned off for so many. Between noon and now, Xcel's outages have dropped from 45,000 to 27,000. When I interviewed Xcel Colorado CEO Robert Kenney earlier this afternoon, he didn't have a breakdown of how many of those outages were the ones Xcel did on purpose to prevent wildfires and how many were from damage because of winds. He did explain to me why even the people who lost power because Xcel turned it off, why they may still not have power today. For people who had their power turned off proactively, how is it that we're Monday, 2 days later, and they still do not have power?
We cannot re-energize those power lines until our personnel, our coworkers are out in the field visually inspecting those lines. If a de-energized line was damaged during the windstorm and fell to the ground, if we were to re-energize that without putting our eyes on it, it would cause a wildfire.
Why wasn't Xcel also at the beginning of the week preparing customers for what ultimately the decision was to turn people off ahead of time?
You know, we acknowledge where there's opportunities to communicate sooner, and we'll work to do that going forward. We've heard that same feedback that you're conveying.
He went on to tell me that weather is dynamic. Kathy, did you know weather's dynamic? No.
Sometimes.
And that while it may be predicted one thing at the start of the week, it may not pan out. And so do you tell people the worst case scenario early if it never ends up getting to that? Interestingly, the Public Utilities Commission wants to hear from you about just that. They're creating a feedback link on the PUC website to get your concerns and complaints. I'll share it on my story on 9news.com as soon as I get it. It includes, do you want to be informed by Xcel even if the worst never happens? And I think I might be perhaps upsetting Kim and Kathy over there about, yeah, like we can predict weather.
I'm just going to say they're going to get feedback. They're going to get feedback.
There's a lot here to cover. One thing, when you're trying to communicate with people who don't have power, that becomes difficult.
So a heads up is kind of a nice thing.
But I can picture the boy who cried wolf scenario, that if you start telling people we're going to turn your power off and it never happens, then you're going to stop listening to that, and then boom, it's going to happen, and you weren't prepared. But here you have the reverse. This is the first time it's happened. This happens in California all the time now. This is the first time in Colorado that this has happened, where we're going to turn your power off to prevent something that may or may not happen. The fact that people weren't necessarily given enough notice to be able to buy ice for their refrigerators and freezers and prepare if you need oxygen. Do you need to go somewhere else to live for a day or two? And the fact that they said we're going to do it, I don't know that it was communicated great that, by the way, when we turn it back on, we have to go look at all these power lines before we can turn it on, which is going to delay the process. Yes. I think that was news on Saturday as they were doing it.
Well, that 100% was.
It hasn't happened here, but obviously they're taking a cue from what they are doing in California, and you would think the blueprint for what they're doing in California would include that information beforehand, how you give that information, when you give that information.
It's amazing that you wouldn't just do that the first time and say, I know this has happened somewhere else, this is what we're going to do. But I guarantee you, the next time this happens, it will be much more than a day's notice.
Yeah. Well, everybody I know says, oh, this is going to happen again. So let's figure it out and do it the right way. All right. Thank you, Marshall. We know you're following this. He has a lot more. Let's take a live look outside right now. The winds did calm down today. Got a little bit warmer, and we're hoping that trend continues into the work week, warms up a little bit, but Just a breeze.
That wind, it felt like today it knocked the sun right out of the sky.
Did it?
Right around lunchtime.
And it looked like it, too.
It got dark.
Amazing, Kathy.
Yeah, I want Marshall to hang on for a sec. I was talking with him because I worked with Jennifer Meckles on Saturday during that wind event. And it was a very scary night because the scenario, in some ways, not exactly, was very similar to the setup for the Marshall Fire. And that's why I think Xcel took some of the preemptive measures they did. But the communication, there were some missing links there for sure. But you know what? In the meteorological community, we like to prepare you for the worst. We'd like to give you as much warning, as much advanced planning time for the worst case scenario. That's how we view it in the meteorological community. And I think it's a good idea to give people time to plan. And if it doesn't happen, sometimes that might be okay. But I was talking with Marshall, and Marshall, I want you to see this because while we have a calm day today, look at some of the peak wind gusts that are now coming in from that Saturday wind event. In the town of Marshall, where the Marshall Fire was, 95-mile-per-hour winds. That actually happened. Winds to 97 mile per hour up in the Encar Boulder area, Coal Creek Canyon winds to 96, Buckeye 93, 91 in Copper Mountain. So, you know, the worst case scenario did in fact happen for a lot of communities. And yep, even though the humidity values were up a little bit, it wasn't as dry as when we experienced that Marshall Fire. Certainly, it was a very scary night for a lot of people. And so communication is everything in a situation like that. Tom brings up a good point too about when the power's out, if people haven't charged their phones or maybe they don't have Wi-Fi, how do you get that information to them? So many things to talk about in regards to this most recent big weather story. A mild, dry evening for Denver. We are tracking a midweek system. It's a weak little system, but 80 degrees, you guys, possible later this week and into the weekend. Today was just nice. Not a lot of wind. Mid-50s in the city, close to 60. Pueblo, Lamar, nice day out there. We're always going to watch the wind this time of year just because every day is fire season in Colorado year round. And so watching these winds kind of creep around from the north and the northwest, out in the northeastern Colorado, we're seeing a bit more of that wind. We've got a little center of circulation here creating that. To the south of us, some high and mid-level clouds may actually bring in some beneficial moisture to the mountains in the form of some light snow tonight. Denver stays dry. We have a beautiful night tonight and a nice day for you tomorrow. So the big story this week is going to be what the temperatures do. I think you'll be surprised by that. But if you're out and about for the next few hours, 50s, enjoy. We'll break down the extended forecast and a potential 80-degree high temperature, first of the season, that is coming up in weather in just a bit.
And today, several schools in Jeffco, Denver, and Boulder had to be closed because they didn't have power. Along with elementary, middle, and high schools, CU Boulder also said some of its buildings on campus were impacted by the power being shut off. Right now, we have not heard of any school closures because of power for tomorrow. Many around the metro area continue to clean up the downed trees. Check out one big one that came down off Pearl and 2nd in Denver, smashing down on a car outside of a home. In Boulder, the county now looking to help people who have spoiled food that they need to get rid of. Boulder residents can go to the Western Disposal's transfer site on 63rd Street. They ask that you bring food in non-glass containers for composting. And at Lakewood, the forestry team there has been clearing trees off city streets. Now the city has opened a tree drop-off site. The city greenhouse on Yale near South Estes will be open for drop-off until next Monday, April 15th. Lakewood says this is just for storm-damaged trees only, and people must be able to unload the tree limbs without assistance. Wheat Ridge also hosting a free branch drop-off for residents. Proof of residency, though, is required. The Wheat Ridge drop-off will be open Friday and Saturday at Anderson Park. They'll be in the northeast lot.
An update today, the Vision Hills fire in Pueblo County is fully contained. Today, the Pueblo Sheriff's Office says the fire burned about 107 acres. That's a fire that started last Friday afternoon. No structures damaged and no one was hurt. The cause, though, is still under investigation. One person was killed this morning in a crash on eastbound E470 near Washington Street. This happened just before 6 a.m. A Ford Explorer rolled onto the ramp on I-25. According to Colorado State Patrol, a second car was involved and the third car hit the debris from the crash. 2 people were taken to the hospital and 1 person later died. CSP says the other person has serious injuries. E470 was closed for 3 hours during the investigation.
Jury selection began today for one of the former Clear Creek County deputies charged in the death of Christian Glass. Andrew Buin facing second-degree murder charges for shooting Glass. Glass had called 911 for help during a mental health crisis. Buin ended up shooting Glass through the window of his car. Once the jury is seated, they're saying that trial is set to last 3 weeks. Well, she was planning to make a lot of money with a cryptocurrency giveaway, but it turns out this too was a scam. Today at 4:30, the latest way people are looking to steal your money by using social media.
Perfect day for science. Our Steve Spangler got out with some students in Littleton for today's special view in the sky.